Hello, this is Tommy Newberry. Welcome back to another episode of Achieving Optimal. This week I have as a special guest for another client spotlight, Michele Velcheck, CEO and founder of Solid Source Realty. So I'm excited to dig in and talk about success and achieving optimal and how you can reach your full potential across all areas of life. So Michele, great to have you with
Tommy.
me today.
Well, it's a blessing to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, we have so much in common. Sometimes we just need to leave the camera running, the mic running, because we'll start talking. I feel like we finished this discussion before we got started.
Well, you know what we've been talking about, though, is really just the way that you and I, in different ways and the same ways, have been leading people through this pandemic time.
Yeah, it's a crazy time, but it seems like by talking to you several times during the whole thing, that we look at it a little bit differently than a lot of people. Not everybody, but there is kind of one way to look at it, which is kind of conventional, or just listening and taking in everything that you're hearing in the media. Then there's kind of a more innovative way.
You know what I think is wise in any situation like this is to really just not be influenced totally by anything. Not just by the media, not just by one news source, not just by one video, not just by one set of numbers, but to think.
That's right.
Use your brain and think, and it's okay.
But don't you think that's a little bit of a common ground that we share, and a lot of my clients share, is we don't look at the world exactly the same. Forget the virus.
Exactly.
Right? I mean,
exactly. It's a problem. I mean, it's an issue. Right.
But
how do you move through it? Like, what am I supposed to do today? What is my job as a leader to help others?
But I think business owners by nature look at problems differently. And that's one of the reasons they're business owners. They think differently. Most people are not business owners. So I have found that I don't think COVID-19 is the problem. I think the way people are thinking about it is the problem.
Isn't that true for every problem?
But yeah, it's not so much the problem, whatever it is. If it's a health problem, business problem, relationship problem, it's not the problem that's the problem. It's how we process, or what our mindset is with regards to the problem. If you get your mindset right, everything else starts to become right.
Well, you know what my awesome coach taught me? My awesome coach.
Did he teach you?
My awesome coach, Tommy Newberry, taught me it is the value that we assign to the problem.
Yeah.
Because, two people, hundreds of thousands, millions of people, we're all facing the same numbers, facing the same. Now, there are, of course, more people. I mean, there are people who are more susceptible to it. Of course, that's a larger problem. Yeah. But let's just say, all of the people who are not high risk, we're all facing, the same issue. And it's really the value that we decide in our thought processes to assign to that problem. It doesn't mean that we should be out breaking the law, like in Georgia, that would have previously been driving at 7:05 p.m. but it does mean.
Oh, I wasn't aware of that law.
But it does mean that we get to decide how consumed our thoughts are going to be on any problem. Just like you said, I mean, whether it's relationship, COVID-19, just the stock market going way up, way down, an employee that's lost a loved one that you're trying to help them through, lead and be encouraging when you struggle, on the inside, just wondering what to do sometimes. And, for me personally, I get down on my knees and ask God. I mean, just because that he will give me a peace or a lack of peace. And he doesn't have to explain his no's to me. No means no.
No, and I'm thinking that when right at the beginning of this situation, people were asking me about this and that, what should I do? And I did this first interview, and I said, the first thing I think we should do is change the channel.
Exactly. Or turn it off.
Yeah, and it's just a metaphor, because I literally mean change the channel in this case. Right. But I also figuratively mean change the channel up here. Change the mental channel. And then the second thing is begin pouring positive mental nutrition in. And then the third is to turn to God. I mean, if this doesn't get your attention, what will? It's kind of like I just envision a billboard, on the side of the road. It said, got your attention now?
I know.
God.
I know, exactly.
But it's such a great opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And right at first, I was almost nervous to say what I just said. Mm-hmm. This is a great opportunity. But this is a great opportunity. Is that the entire story? No, it's not the entire story. There's kind of the dark side of the story, the tragic part of the story.
And it's tragic. I mean, we need to say that. I mean, for the victims, the people that have died, the people that are struggling right now, the families, the healthcare workers, there's a lot of people, it is tragic.
People that have lost a lot of their economic backbone and their economic future is in peril. But we're only seeing a part of the picture.
Exactly.
And even right now, we may think we're seeing more of the picture than some people, and some people may not agree with that. But even the best that we can do, we're just seeing portions of the picture. But what I am hired to do with people is help them optimize.
Right.
So I'm not going to dwell on the certain aspects of this dilemma that we can't control anyway.
Correct.
So I turn my attention back to, okay, we don't know whether this is going to go 30 days, or 6 months or whatever it is. But what we do know is we should focus on what we can, first of all, what we're grateful for. I'll back it up one. So we can put our attention on lots of things.
You're right.
But let's focus on what we're grateful for. I'll challenge everybody, and I'll challenge you, what are you grateful for about this situation? Now, you don't have to stay there, but there are some things that we have recognized, that I have recognized, that are valuable and kind of blessings. Like driving just in our neighborhood near the house, my 8th grader, he said, hey, there seem to be a lot more families walking. And I saw what, looked to be like a 10th grade girl with a 7th grade boy. And I thought, I haven't seen that combination in a long, long time. And I don't know whether it's desperation or what. And then
they could
lots
be brother
of
and
families.
sister, but...
No, I think I'm assuming it was brother and sister, not that kind of desperation, but that it was wholesome.
Right.
And then walking on our back porch, I heard this is like 7 o'clock at night. It's almost dark now. Lots of laughter and kids playing. And I just hadn't heard as much of that, with how much kids are inside today and how busy their schedules are. The other thing was I don't remember, certainly since I've known you, being this unrushed.
Exactly.
And I don't want this to be the permanent state, but it's kind of nice. Like, well, we can leave now or we can leave in 30 minutes.
Right.
But anyway, that's what I push everybody. Tell me something you're grateful for about the mess. Okay. In the mess, what's great in the mess? And then tell me some other things that don't have anything to do with the mess, but just things that you're glad you'll have when you wake up tomorrow and you hope you'll have them.
Exactly.
What are those things?
So I will say, looking back on it, because it seems like we're to at least a certain percentage over 50 since we're reopening things on Friday in Georgia or starting the initial comeback. But I will say, I know that fear is really what can cripple our organization and any organization, employees, the leader. And what I did that was a little different, but when you say, what are you thankful for?
Yeah.
I immediately, when Fulton County schools closed that day, our employees, so we are completely paperless, so it's very easy for us to work from home anyway. That was not an issue. So I'm very grateful for that, big time, that we've been that way for over 7 years. But I told my employees, no matter what, even if all of the closings go away and something devastating and half of our firm of agents left, they would still be paid through June the 30th. No matter what. Now,
and how was that received?
Oh my gosh, Tommy, they were so grateful. Of course, but that's my family. My staff is my family.
Sure.
And they were so grateful. But the reason that I made that choice is because I know that boredom is Satan's playhouse. And when we get home by ourselves, if we are by ourselves, really, or the people who had school-age children.
Yes.
But either one of those, fear And especially watching the news in the background, fear can just eat you alive. And I wanted my staff to know, no matter what, I'm getting paid through June the 30th.
Yes.
So I'm keeping my head in the game, and I'm not going to let all the unemployment numbers, I'm not going to let all of that stuff infiltrate my thought process and override my judgment on how to spend my time while I'm at home.
Right, because one of the key things about fear is fear takes over in your mind when you haven't put something better in there first, such as faith, because fear is the strongest emotion other than faith.
Yes.
But that's why there's really these 4 areas which I think play into mindset, and we talked about them a lot, but one is appreciating things. So we talked about that. The second is focusing on what you can control.
Absolutely.
So we can't control the market, and we can't control even our family members. We can't control the weather and so on. We can't control what's happening with the economy or whether a politician opens this or closes that.
Right.
But there are so many things that we can control. So literally, if you were to draw a line down a sheet of paper, like on this legal pad, on the left-hand side, you could put all the things that you can't control, and there'd be a half dozen or so of things that are relevant. On this side, on the control side, you'd have to go to the next page. In other words, there are so many things that we can control. So to stay mentally healthy, if you'll stay on the right-hand side, the side where you can focus on what you can do something about.
Well, look what we're controlling. Today, we're making a video.
That's right. That's right.
we're making a video. We're being productive. I'll tell you something else.
And we may not have been doing this if we didn't have an altered schedule.
Exactly.
There's 2 more that I think are important, and they make kind of a foursome, which I call a thought budget. The third one is focus on opportunities. So first was gratitude and appreciation. Second, focus on controllables. What you can do. Third is focus on opportunities and possibilities. There's some that have occurred to me, ways to take my coaching online and virtual.
That's awesome.
I have some skills now that I didn't have 3 weeks ago because of necessity. And then the fourth one is kind of the oddball, but this is the 4th mindset challenge during a crisis, but it really helps you anytime. It's kind of like, what should you eat during a crisis?
Exactly. Oh, that's a good one.
You should eat well, in anticipation of what your long-term health goals are. So really, we should all be eating the same way now, maybe better.
Actually better, because we can prepare.
Right, and there's more at stake if we're sloppy. So the 4th one, though, is focus on serving and taking care of others. Because sometimes kind of a sibling of fear is selfishness.
Exactly.
And so in a situation like this, it's real easy to get down, self-pity, feeling sorry for yourself, all of that. So how do you get rid of that? It's hard to get rid of it directly if you're feeling it. So instead, help somebody else.
That's right. Choose it.
How can I serve somebody else? How can I add more value to my clients? How can I have more interaction? I've probably had more interaction with a certain sector of my clients in the last month,
right,
than I did in the previous month, because it seemed like that was the right thing to do. Or I want to reach out. I want to make sure they know I'm thinking about them and interacting with them. But it's also around the house and with friends and with neighbors, or if you see somebody when you are out and about. So think about these things together. And
you haven't been out and about though, right?
I have been out and about because I think differently and I don't live in fear. But number one,
I'm not going to judge you for that.
Be appreciative. It's like when you told me about that curfew, I was thinking, I knew I've heard about that curfew sometime, but I didn't think that was
applicable
to me. I thought
well, thank goodness you didn't go to jail for a year, because you could have.
A year. Well, that would be, I'm sure you couldn't get sick in jail.
I know.
But so be appreciative. And when you run out of appreciative thoughts, turn your thoughts to things you can control. When you run out of controllable thoughts, turn your mind to possibilities and opportunities. When you run out of those thoughts, you're at the end of your budget. What do you spend your thought life on? Serving and adding value to others. And if you do those things, you kind of are pushing all of the negative, unhelpful thoughts out of your mind.
You know what I think is very healthy too is we all know, if we think about it, our natural tendency, okay, just our natural tendency when something negative happens, especially as a leader, handle a situation, right? Like how we cope, because as a leader, you don't want to say everything's going to be okay when you don't know that everything's going to be okay. But I mean, we have to be honest 100% truth and 100% grace, but I mean, 100% truth is first. So it's, so we can't say that everything's going to be okay.
So
but
what
I
do you
thought
say?
about what you could say is, but I can provide safety and relief and peace knowing that you're getting paid, for example, through June 30th. But so my natural, here's a little inside Michelle, my natural tendency is to isolate and is to get so much information. You know how nerdy I am. And I'll start reading and getting as much as I can, thinking about opportunity, but really ways to engage people so that they don't have the fear sneaking in. But even working with agents, with real estate agents, you know, it was up and down for a minute and no one even knew. Is it okay to even go see a home? And which it is. I mean, real estate was determined a critical infrastructure, but that took a week. So, I mean, there are so many lives. We have 1,700 real estate agents, so many lives that were just put on hold. And so even though closings were still happening for things under contract, people losing their jobs, people getting right to the closing date and then not being able to close and losing their earnest money because they lost their job. So the loan didn't go through. That's a lot of moving parts. And so my personality type is I want to create a process, okay, so that we're like our staff is giving consistent answers and that they are being able to cast their burdens daily. And it's so easy to say, you know, God, of course, Jesus tells us, you know, his burden is light. But the thing is, we just forget. I mean, sometimes during stuff like this, we have to do it throughout the day because you talk to somebody and then their aunt just died with COVID-19. You talk to somebody else who just lost their job. I mean, it can be heavy if we're not intentionally.
But don't you think that all begins like ahead of the storm? So we're in a storm right now, but if you wait to prepare until the storm hits, then you're in trouble, is what I found. And so I think that right now we're in a storm, and if we prepared, then we're doing better than those that weren't prepared.
Exactly.
But I've been telling everybody that, you know, regardless of what happens with this particular situation, there's going to be more adversity in the future.
Of course.
It may be a health issue. It may be an economic issue. It may be something on relationship. It may be something we haven't even thought of. It may be something that applies to all of us like this, or it may be something that is a tragic family situation in your own life. But whenever you're in the middle of something that is a difficulty, you want to not only respond to it in a positive way for that particular situation, but everybody needs to realize, I keep trying to remind myself, this is also a training ground for future adversity, because there's going to be more adversity. This is interesting.
Personally or professionally.
Yeah, this just is odd because it affects everybody.
And that's what we should take a minute to ask everyone to do that's listening, is because I think so many of us, you've had more time. For me personally, I've had a lot less time just because, you know, there's so many moving parts in our industry. But just what I was saying about retreating to isolation, when I know that's my natural tendency, some people retreat to fear and then they just, you know, don't do anything. They get paralyzed. You know, some people go into isolation and then try to fix it all before putting it out to, but the thing is, we will just never have all the information. We'll only have as much information, as you said, that we can get today. And so it's becoming comfortable in the tube of the wave. You know, I mean, the wave is going to stop. I mean, the tube is not infinite. And it's just realizing that we can be peaceful in the storm. And nobody expects us to know everything. But sometimes when we're not in a storm and things are very logical and you could see where they could possibly end, or maybe 3 different ways that you could go to optimize the situation. But I think it's becoming comfortable in not knowing and giving ourselves a break as leaders, and just realize that no one expects you to have all the answers. You know, I mean, nobody expects you.
That's why sometimes you have to say, I don't know.
That's right.
You know, I don't know, but I'm going to
communicating.
I'm going to be alongside you, but I don't know exactly how this is going to work out.
And just communicating, and just, you know, absolutely communicating. And but taking a moment, I think what you hit on is huge right now, because really taking a moment to see, like, if we looked at today's date and we said, what are the thought processes that I've gone through as a leader, making decisions personally? You know, how did I interfere? And give yourself a grade even. And don't be too hard or too generous. Really give yourself a grade, because until we say, this is how I handled this, you know, this part of it, and then this part of it, maybe personally with my kids, professionally with agents, with our staff, But if we say, how did we do it? And how would I do it again next time? Just taking that as an exercise.
Or if I had a do-over.
Right, if I had a do-over.
What would I
had
change
a mulligan.
about it?
Yes.
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 And then, well, that's how you accelerate growth.
Exactly.
And advancement and improvement and all that. If you are oblivious to all of that.
Right.
Like there are a lot of people out there, not most of the people that we interact with on a daily basis, but there are a lot of people who, for example, have resorted to watching excessive amounts of TV, kind of the Netflix contagion, if you will, and then eating comfort food. And they're thinking about the words, I like to say, cope, survive, get by.
Running as fast as we can. I'm just getting by.
Make it through this thing.
Exactly.
I like to just flip the tables over and say, no, it's not about surviving. It's about thriving. It's about coming out better, stronger, faster. And the reason I think that's important is the thought of surviving. I mean, certainly we want to survive, right? We want to get through this. But if your standard is just to get through it, it's not as inspiring to you or anybody you're trying to lead.
And how do you define the finish line?
Yeah. So, but if it's like, wow, when we're back to normal and I can have this new skill or I can have accomplished this. So I think all of these kinds of scenarios, and this sounds this sounds like a typical thing you're going to say that I often say that you like to quote me on, but I think adversity reveals a lot of losers. And see, I knew. But let me say the flip side of it. You flip that over. Adversity reveals a lot of winners.
You actually mean that in love.
Yeah. Well, I'm just trying to tell the truth. Because you know what happens? Adversity, if you can stop laughing, adversity makes you more of what you were before the adversity started. Exactly. It's kind of like money. If you're a jerk before you make your money and you make your money, you're going to be a jerk with money.
A bigger jerk.
Yes. If you're really a giver and a nice quality person with substance, and you then make a lot of money, you earn a lot of money, then you're going to be more of a giver, more of a high character person. And so with adversity, even though it kind of sounds heartless, that is what happens. A lot of people are going to have regret when this is over. Not regret that they lost some money or regret
lost their job.
The more subtle regrets that, I had all this extra time with my family and we just kind of were in our separate spots in the house doing our own thing. We had all this extra time, but I didn't improve a relationship. We had all this extra time where I could have worked out as much as I wanted. And I said, well, my gym was closed. Well, there's a time, believe it or not, in history where we didn't have gyms. There's all sorts of great exercise, and I'm seeing more people exercising.
Absolutely.
But it would be awful because we don't know how much longer it's going to go on. But I'm mainly talking about for the future. When you're in adversity, you want to deal with it, but you also want to use it as a platform to make yourself better, stronger, faster, because that's the growth mindset. And we either have a growth mindset where we believe that regardless of what's happening, we can massage and manipulate and form and make things work better in the future. We believe we can influence what happens to us. And in the research by Carol Dweck from Stanford in the book Mindset, she talks about the other side of the equation, which is those with a fixed or stagnant mindset.
Right.
And they kind of believe that it is what it is.
Right.
That we're stuck. We can't change things for the better because this is my lot in life. This is the card that I drew. And that's why I'm drawn to, people that want to grow are less offended. They kind of laugh like you did when I said, this reveals losers. It does.
Well,
and
I
people
just mean
who don't
it's a
relate
very
to
direct
that.
way to say that.
Yes, so what would be a nice way to say that?
A nice way
How
to
would
say
you
that.
say it?
It reveals areas in our character that we have an opportunity to grow in.
See, you need to be my press spokesperson.
Exactly. But it does. But I will say, one of the most valuable things, and I can't say it without laughing, but just that my great coach, Tommy Newberry, did is I was going through, remember, just something tragic with a family member, completely concerned, about life and death,
Yeah.
And I mean, literally, you just said, well, that is terrible, Michelle, but why don't we spend our hour together on the phone talking about things that you do have impact and you can change, because you can't change another person's decisions and where that may lead them. But it was just so bizarre because, and that's how I always talk about you, as you know, but to tell people, gosh, any friend, man, woman, I mean, anybody from church, I mean, anybody would just go, oh my gosh, that's so terrible, and be this 20-minute conversation.
Right.
But your ability to turn my mind just like that in a sentence. But I was able to do it. I just switched gears.
And that's what we've all done it. We've all had, we've all been engrossed in some kind of negativity or anger or fear, and then something happened in the other room, or the phone rang, and whatever that story was was more urgent than the one in our mind, and we instantly change gears, pick up the phone, and we go rush to help our child who fell out of the crib in the other room, and then sometimes we never even return to what had us all worked up.
But you showed me that is possible. You created an awareness that I did not have, that is actually possible. So sometimes I say sometimes, frequently, if there's something and it's in the middle of it and you start to feel, just like recently, overwhelmed by all of the different decisions and what the potential consequences are, good and bad. If you make the right or wrong decision, right, without enough information. But that mindset that you created in me, it allows me to stay completely peaceful and objectively consider different outcomes.
But it wasn't even that I was saying, let's not ever come back to that.
Right.
It was like, let's not let what we can't control or come up with a solution today bleed into all these other things that we can have immediate influence on.
Right.
So I would say, how do we come back and address that particular issue? We set an appointment.
Exactly.
Even if it's mental.
Oh, no, I do that.
We go, we're going to come back and we're going to focus only on that. And it's almost like a crisis appointment or a negativity issue time.
Pity party. Whatever you want to have. It's like it will last from 4 to 4:30 p.m. on Wednesday, and then I'm done. And if I need to have another appointment, then I will, but it's not going to be from 4:30 to 5. I mean, it will be next week. But I agree with you. Just having that appointment time that you can feel however you want to feel or whatever, but you just keeping that objectivity, because remember my issue, it was over someone that I couldn't change me. They were making bad decisions. And I couldn't do anything about it anyway.
Right.
But I was so overwhelmed in fear, thinking, oh my gosh, what if he dies? And
you just can't let that, that's a discipline, which is a life skill. I'm not saying people should be born like that, with immediately being able to do it. So I like challenging people and saying, look, you can be a better problem solver. You can be more helpful to this person if we get the other aspects of your life as strong as they can possibly be. In other words, put the oxygen mask on yourself, take care of yourself, practice the positive self-management, then you can be a better problem solver for everybody else. But let's change gears for a second and talk about some success qualities that we both share and espouse and promote to others. And I'd like to do it by coming back to how you started Solid Source in the first place, because it's a realty business. You help sell homes, but you go about it in a way that's different in the marketplace. So tell me about how that came about, how you came up with that idea and when that got started. And then we can talk about some of the principles that you've implemented along the way.
Okay. Well, in 2003, I opened Solid Source. And the reason was because in Arizona, where I had lived for 5 years previous, got divorced and came back, had a 2-year-old. As a single mom, I wanted to find a place that had a flat commission plan. And when I say that, I mean a lot of agents pay 30, 40, even 50% of the commission to the broker, even though they're independent contractors. So, there isn't health benefits or, a steady income. It's all them. They're not reimbursed for gas or lunches or anything else. And so I had worked for a place in Arizona that had a flat commission plan. And when I moved back here, I'd been investing in real estate for about 12 years, and I couldn't find a company that offered that. And I thought, well, my stars, most of the real estate that I'm doing right now is investing, buying and selling houses, for myself and getting tenants. And I thought, gosh, I just can't imagine going to pay 30 to 40%. And then I thought, I can't believe I'm going to have to get my broker's license and open a firm to get that. And so anyway, I did. And then I just thought to myself, I thought, wow, there's got to be other investors out there, investor real estate agents, that don't feel like they should be paying a percentage either. You're buying and selling your own place. And some companies will give you one a year, that you don't have to pay the standard. But for the rest of them, you do. So for investors that are buying several a year. And so really that was it. We when I opened, it was just me, and I never dreamed it was going to turn into what it was. But it was funny, God had given me the name quite some time before, and it was just Solid Source. And
meaning
so
what?
God is the solid source.
Nice.
And so, I know, it's so funny. I'd really applied it to like several different things I'd thought about through the time.
So why have you attracted so many agents to Solid Source? Beyond the obvious with the commission, why wouldn't there be 10 times more? Or what? It's really breaking convention, isn't it?
Right. And when we opened, it definitely was. And then we exploded really in 2005, 2006. I started teaching about investing, and there was no, investor CE classes at the time at a popular school. And then in 2006, though, we created the first paperless real estate management software system in the nation. And so I started with a white sheet of paper, but the law had changed that year, and it changed to say from an original blue ink signature having to be maintained by the broker, that it could be blue pen signature or digital. I immediately called 5 different software companies, told them what I wanted to do. And so, agents not having to come into the office for the first time. And now, there's, I'm sure, at least
But that was a competitive advantage for a while.
Oh,
right?
are you kidding me? We had like a 2.5-year jump, maybe even a little more. And even still, we've updated it 2 years ago. We did a total rewrite. So now agents don't even have to type in anything except their commission. So it interfaces with our MLS system.
But I think when I first spoke with you about Solid Source, that was kind of how you explained the edge.
Exactly.
You said we have a technology edge.
Right.
That's before I knew what it was.
Exactly. So we do that, but we're very aggressive. Like we do earnest money online. And so, a lot of people don't realize one of the greatest exposures to liability that each of us have just as consumers is writing a check. Because every time you write a check, then someone's got your exact spacing of your check. They've got your signature, your banking information, but they can create one very easily. And now they've got your signature as well. And so being able to submit it online in a secure environment where even we don't get their information is wonderful. Is wonderful for them. But we've been doing that for we're going on the 8th year. So it's things that, and then we created it for our attorney as well, because now they use it. It's just,
nice.
I think a lot of times it's having the courage to do something that nobody else is doing. And as you know, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, but you just want to be, absolutely sure, do all the testing, do all the background. And the way that we really decide what's next is to think about, like for a real estate agent, how can you give them more quality time without charging any more money? Remember the Blockbuster story. You don't even want to go up $5 a month, right? And so, but you just definitely, if we're always focused on serving our own people, as opposed to what a lot of companies do, and they're more focused on recruiting other agents. And it always breaks my heart, when I see that and just say, wow, they're offering agents leads to come to their firm, but what about the loyal agents who have been there?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't they be the ones to get it? They've been loyal,
Sounds like the cable.
The
cable
offers,
offers,
right.
You sign up now, we'll give you this special deal. And what about the people that have been your customers for all this time?
Right, you have to leave to get the deal,
So what are some of the principles that you credit with the growth that you've had at Solid Source? Like what have you done that has now stood the test of time that you can say absolutely works?
Definitely being paperless, but not just settling for a system. The reason that ours is proprietary is because it's specifically for Georgia agents, and it just makes their life so much easier. It's
so that's kind of a competitive edge.
It is
like an efficiency, though.
Well, it definitely is, because they don't have to re-enter the information like they do with the other systems. You have to enter in the MLS, enter it in their company system. So that's definitely a competitive edge.
What about your guiding principles that make up your philosophy of how to run the business? Tell me about some of those things.
It's definitely based on truth. It's definitely based on servant leadership. And when I say that, that's become somewhat of a cliche. But I always like to ask people, well, if you're saying that you're a servant leader, how do you serve? Because I can tell you the way that we spend money and that we reinvest in everything that we provide to agents, we do it at no additional cost. And what we consider our job is to stay ahead so that 1,700 agents are not having to research how can I automate my social media? I mean, that's something we came out a few weeks ago.
You're the source.
Right. And so we do all the research because we've got, of course, a staff to do it. And then we simplify it so that the agent, basically, we try to get it down to either is just one click, with the short 5-minute video. And it's not to say that they can't think on their own and do their own research for things that they want to do. But I think if you were to ask our agents, that's one of the things that they love about us. And that is how they feel cared for, that we're always trying to keep them ahead in the marketplace.
Yeah.
And another thing is just fairness, Tommy. Fairness goes a long way. And gosh, there's a lot of companies that you start on one plan, and boy, one or two right now during this COVID-19 time, just literally changed something for people that have been there for a really long time, getting pipeline, kind of a multi-level marketing thing, and they've just literally reduced it. And I thought, class action waiting to happen, but we just know it change. I mean, we do what we say what we mean, and I mean, we always have their best interest at heart. Another thing is we're very nerdy on the inside, and we read all the time. We read real estate law every year. We have 2 attorneys on staff. We have 5 brokers. One of the competitive edges as well is just that our brokers are non-competing, and that's really what separates us. Not only are they high capacity, but they're also not selling against you in the field. So most brokerages have competing brokers on staff. So they're selling their own homes and then calling you back when they can.
Right.
But when we've got 2 staff attorneys, that's
serve.
all we're doing. We're literally non-competing. So I mean, we are there only to help our agents
I bet
get through.
A lot of people aren't even aware of that.
That's
consumer
huge.
Side.
I 100% agree. And as a consumer, it's definitely a blessing, just because we can get people out of situations a lot of times just based on our knowledge of the law. We're not trying to recall what somebody did or what we did in our own transaction and found out 2 years ago. We just know the law, and we read it every year, and we get updated. We even get updated through LexisNexis, just even on case law changes.
So it has much changed since you had the original idea, as far as the core focus that makes you stand out, or is it just what has changed is how you go about achieving that?
I think the most important thing, if I had to say, looking back on it, was, of course, just being willing to build the bridge as you walk on it somewhat. I mean, just seeing something in a law change where the word digital, and then you're just picking up the phone and calling 5 software companies, because the first thought was, oh my gosh, does this mean agents would not even have to drive to the office? And I thought, that would be amazing. I'm, a single mom, just thinking about the time savings and the gift of time that is.
Your mindset was looking for things.
Right.
Like
and it still does. That's how we do things.
Proof that it was going to work or be valuable. You just kind of launched down that way.
Right.
So what are some of the detours that you've had along the way, or what's one detour where you maybe bumped into some fear and you had to overcome it? Did something stand on the business side did you ever get the thought that this might not work?
No.
How did you avoid that kind of thought?
Do you know how?
How?
Okay. Define not work, right? When you owe more than you have, just if you're thinking about, just like technically what does not work mean? So we've been debt free since we opened. And so I've never had a
So
loan.
that's just a core operating principle.
It's a
right
core
there. And did
operating
you make
principle.
that decision, or did you kind of drift into that
Oh,
decision?
no, heavens no. No, I live my own life that way. And I always think, this is what I always used to say to people, it's just, you know what? If I keep my bills where no matter what job I've had, and I've worked for, Pfizer Pharmaceuticals, Sierra Garden Surgical Sales, I mean, nice jobs out of college. But if I always keep my bills where I could go wait tables at the Waffle House and pay them,
Yeah.
I'm good to go, right? And so when you say, did you think it would fail? I didn't think it would fail because it's debt free. And if you don't have debt, then really, I mean,
You've
the
got
only,
freedom.
it's
You've got
freedom. It is freedom. And you can upsize, downsize if you had to for staff, but besides that, I mean, you can't go up if you don't owe any money.
That's right. And it's a principle that very few apply, particularly on the business side.
I agree.
Because they think, well, business is an exception.
Right. And I can't tell you how many people said that to me. I mean, good mentor type, friends and business leaders.
You said you could break that rule on the business side?
Well, they didn't even talk about it breaking the rule. They're just saying, leverage, leverage, leverage. Are you crazy? Like, you've got to leverage. Think about it. And I go, yeah, that's not going to happen. And I think really just being a single mom, and I know single parents can relate to this. If you don't have that fallback system, even if you have people that would emotionally support you, but if you don't have, say a family that has a lot of money or, just you've always had to fight and work and work and work for everything that you've got. I mean, you get in that mindset, but I mean, you can't go down. I mean, you really start to think problems through and you're not just wasting money saying a what if.
Right.
I mean, I've never bought a lottery ticket only because I don't know how to play. And I don't judge people that do it. Sometimes I think to myself, gosh, I wish I just knew how to play. Like I literally don't know how to play. So it makes me feel silly. So maybe I feel like I'm too late to learn now, but well, I just don't like the odds. I just don't like the odds.
I was thinking the other day that Michele could be so much more successful.
See, if I just bought a lottery ticket,
the lottery.
I know, but you know what I mean. It's like the reason I've never done it is not over a judgment thing about the lottery. It's about I don't like the odds.
Yeah,
I mean, I'd rather just work hard.
It's worked pretty well so far. We're just about out of time.
Okay,
I want to ask you about some people.
Okay,
who are some people that have helped you get to where you are? Like in the early days, who are some people that gave you guidance and mentorship along the way? I find there's always those people.
Right.
Right.
There's a few people. One was a manager that I had in surgical sales. And it was actually I just converted, a big hospital. And it was back in the pager days. And so I'm on the phone and I'm one of two or maybe three females in the company nationwide. Okay, we were selling urological supplies. And so anyway, so he does this call and he says, hey, Division 2, we've got a rock star in our midst. And he's going on and I'm thinking, oh, I can't wait to congratulate you every saying, right? And then he said, it's Michele. And I go, oh my gosh, Tommy, I just started crying. I still remember where I was standing at the payphone in Northside Hospital, even though there's no longer a payphone there through the renovation. But I will never forget just being, somewhat acknowledged, even though it was for actual productivity. I mean, it was still, though, I think, I think we all have those times in our lives that maybe we found out we were smart or we found out we were good at something.
Did that increase your belief?
It did. It certainly did. And because, I'd been working 3 jobs in high school, 3 jobs to get through college. I just paid my way. I was in the military so I got the GI Bill-ish, that type of help from the military, which was amazing. Love the Army, love being an MP, but also I just worked my way through. So I just never, had debt. I mean, I did graduate, not with a proud GPA, but I did bold it across the top and say I did that while working 3 jobs, and so instead of trying to hide it on the last page, I just put it in bold across the top. So it worked okay. I got a job at Pfizer, but so that person for sure.
And that was rather late in life, right?
Well, 24.
Yeah.
I had 24, 25. And so that happened. And then I would say at Solid Source, I think one of the greatest things that we can all know is how little we know. And so I've really never thought of myself, or I mean, I do think of it now because you know what? If you just keep reading, okay, if you think that you're not a smart person, which is what I thought, like through high school, I've always struggled with ADD. I'm sure that's shocking to you, but
Wait, what did you say?
I know, right? So you know, when you don't think that you're smart, right? Then I mean, some people like me, I'm going to get up earlier. I'm going to read more.
See, that's the quality right there. Well, no, I think there's actually that's an interesting dynamic of success is when there's a little when you never think you know it all,
right?
Or you always interact with somebody, no matter what they appear on the outside, as if they have something
but they
to
do.
offer.
I think
they have
every
something
person
to
every
share.
person
And
does.
if it doesn't come out of their mouth, it might come out of their actions or
Exactly.
their example or something like that. And I think so many people, they get their academic credentials and they get hung up in them and they don't learn.
Well, people think that's the finish line.
Yeah.
And so, you know what, it's funny because there are people that say, you know, I want to grow and learn, and that's who I am today. But the way I started was thinking I actually have to do this to keep up because I barely scraped out of college and other people are smarter than me. I mean, that was a foundational belief that I had. It's a false belief, but
you had it, but
right.
You flipped it into something good.
Yes.
You've made it. Maybe it was for bad, but you've turned it.
Well, that's
for
what I mean.
good.
You know what? When
because
you get
I get lots of great book recommendations from you. In other words,
right.
You're a as they say,
avid
a voracious,
reader. Right? I know,
voracious reader. And a lot of people think who are on the outside would think, okay, well, she's got it made. She doesn't need to keep learning. And the thing is the more you learn, the more you want to learn.
Exactly.
Because it reminds you of how much more there is to learn, how much you don't know, and how valuable learning is. I just think that there's a little bit of a bad paradigm in this country, at least, I think, that schooling is formal. And what I found is that what's available to us through the blessing of the free market is that you can learn without all the fluff. In other words, some of the best ideas are available from people who've actually done it and got results, and they're available cheap. I mean, you can
look at Audible. You can listen to it. Like I listened to 2 books while I was painting my basement 2 weeks ago.
But if you didn't want to do that, then you could go to the library. I mean, if you're in a spot in life where you can't even afford Audible, you know, or buying the books at Amazon, you know, they have digital things you can check out.
Do you know that most books have a PDF? Like if you know, if it's an older book, if it didn't just come out, so many are on PDF, or the author has, you know, 20 YouTube videos kind of slicing it up. I mean, you can still get information so easy. And I love it. You know what I love? And I know you do too. I love finding out something that I did not know, kind of like what you showed me that I was saying was just so life-changing for me and applicable in so many different situations. But I love finding out like a new principle, just a new way to process information.
Well, if you're always looking for it, what I found happens is you notice it.
Right.
But I'm not convinced somebody didn't share that with me years ago.
Right.
Or it wasn't put right in front of me.
Right, but you didn't need it then.
Yeah, there's a little bit of an element of when the student is ready.
Yes, the teacher will come.
The coach will appear.
Yes, that's
I like
true.
to paraphrase it like that to make it well. So I think we've just about run out of time.
I know. I had so much fun.
Let's do it again. Let's make this part 1.
Absolutely.
And we'll talk more about your clutter projects and the things that you nailed. And I had some of my own that I took care of during this unusual time.
Yes. I know. Those are good ones.
So thanks for hanging out for a little bit.
Listen, I appreciate you.
Until next time.
I know. Thank you so much. And just thank you for sharing. And thank you for the impact that you've had in my life when you asked that question. I mean, not just because I'm on your show.
Yeah. Well, your success blesses others.
Yes, it does.
And remember, your success blesses others.
It does. Thanks, Tommy.